Good evening. Now that we have our honored guests this evening seated, we will begin the program. And I'll sing for you, "There is a Sweet, Sweet Spirit," Dr. Derek Bell's favorite song. There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know that it's the Spirit of the Lord. There are sweet expressions on each face, and I know they feel the presence of the Lord. Sweet Holy Spirit, sweet heavenly dove, stay right here with us, filling us with your love. And for these blessings, we lift our hearts in praise. Without a doubt, we'll know that we have been revived when we shall leave this place.
Well, that was truly beautiful. Thank you for starting the evening that way. Welcome to all of you. It is a great honor of mine to welcome you to NYU Law School for the 22nd annual Derek Bell Lecture on Race in American Society. This lecture has quickly become one of the most important intellectual events here at the law school every year. And certainly one of my favorite as well. As Janet knows, I have to get on a plane for Madrid in a couple of hours, but didn't want to miss at least some of this evening. It's always tremendously enjoyable and inspiring. We're delighted to see so many of Derek's family and friends here with us this evening. We're joined by his sister, Janet Bell, his sons, Carter and Derek III, and of course, his widow, Dr. Janet Bell. I've said on these evenings in past years that I did not have the pleasure and honor of knowing Derek. He passed before I joined the faculty here, but I see his influence, his presence really, everywhere in the school still today. He had a profound impact on this law school, on its faculty and students, but of course on law and society more broadly. And I know that none of you here tonight needs convincing on that point. I know that you are here because of the work that Derek did, because of the work that he inspired and continues to inspire. He was truly a tremendous figure in constitutional law and in civil rights law. His leadership as a scholar, teacher, and activist helped foster a dialogue on the progress of racial reform in the United States, or in many cases on the lack of progress in racial reform in the United States. And his steadfast sense of integrity permeated truly every phase of his celebrated career as scholar, lawyer, and teacher. And we are tremendously grateful that Derek eventually chose NYU Law School as his ultimate academic home, where, as I say, he was admired by faculty, administrators, and students alike. He was here, too, a celebrated teacher. In 2012, we posthumously awarded him the law school's Podell Distinguished Teaching Award for his outstanding achievements as a constitutional law teacher. And that's just one of the innumerable examples I could list of the many well-deserved honors that Derek received in his lifetime. So tonight we gather to celebrate and carry his extraordinary legacy forward and to continue to enhance and expand upon the work and really the work agenda that he set out for the country when it comes to race in the United States. The mission of this lecture series is to examine the role of race in American society, and it has served as an important platform for leading scholars and activists to share their work on racial justice and civil rights. We welcome back tonight a number of past Bell lecturers, including Sherilyn Ifill, also Emma Coleman Jordan, and Kendall Thomas. Kendall was my constitutional law professor at another law school, and it's wonderful to see you back here, Kendall. In a short while, Ted Shaw will present this year's Bell Lecture, Race and Rights in a Time of Madness. What would Derek do? WWDD. Ted will be introduced formally in just a moment by Vincent Sutherland, the executive director of our new Center on Race, Inequality, and the Law. But I do just want to say personally, Ted, how thrilled we are that you're here with us tonight and how much we're looking forward to hearing from you. I also want to say how pleased I am with the launch of the Center on Race, Inequality, and the Law under the leadership of Vincent and Tony Thompson, its faculty director. I want to recognize both of them for the tremendous leadership that they've exercised. As you know, the Bell Lecture is now housed within the center on a permanent basis, and we know that it will be an annual critical event for the center, and the center is doing tremendous work in a number of ways already, including involving our students in its work, and I'm just thrilled with that. But now it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Janet Bell, who has been an integral member of the law school community for many years. The Bell Lecture Series was her idea. It was conceived of by Janet as a gift for Derek's 65th birthday. And it's not surprising that Janet would think up such a compelling event, given her own professional and personal commitment to education and communication, as well as to civil rights and justice. Her career has, again, unsurprisingly, also been marked by an enduring dedication to volunteer service and to promoting initiatives that increase diversity and equal rights for all. An indispensable member of the NYU law community. We are grateful to have you back with us tonight, Dr. Bell.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I find it such a privilege to be able to thank Trevor Morrison, a great dean of this great law school, who has been so supportive institutionally and personally. Thank you, Trevor. Derek lived to teach, and teaching kept him alive. For him, it was always students first. That was a mantra in our household. In that universal encyclopedia, his portrait is next to the definition of mentor. For him, there was no higher calling than teacher. It is always gratifying and humbling that students here this year who never met him in person are still very much his students, continuing to carry on his work with integrity and dedication. Let me acknowledge our three sons, Derek Bell III, and y'all stand up. I'm not going to say this to everybody. Everyone say your name, stand up. Douglas Du Bois Bell is not here tonight, and Carter Robeson Bell. I always point out the significance of those names. Our family wit is Carter Bell, and he always points out that he actually has three last names. Carter being in honor of one of Derek's mentors, Robert L. Carter, and his wife, Gloria. The late Judge Carter argued the first Brown v. Board case before the Supreme Court and taught at this law school. By the way, Derek's other mentor was the late civil rights attorney and judge, Constance Baker Motley. I'd like to especially acknowledge Derek's baby sister, Janet A. Bell, who traveled from Pittsburgh to be with us today. Thanks to our adopted daughter, Lisa Marie Boykin, NYU Law 95. Woohoo! A first among equals, who remains a faithful and incomparable standard bearer of the Bell legacy. I especially want to lift up the memory of Derek's first wife, Jewel Hairston Bell, a phenomenal woman who died before Derek and I met as partners in all things. She and Derek set the standard. Years ago, there was a group of people who helped found this lectures. You know, you do not do this alone. Judge Robert L. Carter, Paulette Jones Robinson, Valerie Kavanaugh, and Bill Kerstetter, who are here tonight. People want to see you. Stand up, stand up. Valerie and Bill represent an illustrious and fierce group of social justice and legal advocates. In our village, too, is the international lawyer, one of Derek's first students at Harvard, Alice Young. Who, along with Charles Ogletree, Harvard professor and Derek's student at Harvard, helped endow this series. Thank you. We've had recent major assists from Dr. Kitty M. Steele and Louis Steele, and from Ted and Nina Wells. Louis Steele and Ted and Nina Wells are with us tonight. I know you're there. Bell lecturers have been consistently wonderful and brilliant, and there is no exception tonight. I'd like to say personal thanks for this 22-year-old series, one of the first of its kind in the country, to former Dean and University President John Sexton, a Bell student at Harvard, who championed this series from the beginning, and his successor, the very shy Ricky Revesz, who is here somewhere. He's in the back, I got him. With enduring thanks to LACA, the Law Alumni of Color Association, and its president, Rafiq Kalamuddin. Special thanks, too, to the Office of Development and Alumni Relations for taking the care and attention to this series year after year. And I especially would like to acknowledge the Associate Director, Kelly Spencer, for going way beyond the call of duty. Now, on behalf of the Bell family and extended family, I continue to pledge our commitment to this wonderful law school. Derek loved it. Represented in part by this lecture series and the courtyard bench with a plaque in Derek's honor. Derek also donated his archives to this school, and other scholars have been using it, so I encourage you to do so. There are now almost 170 boxes cataloged in the Bell archives, with more to come. Derek was prolific. I would like to tonight, given all that's going on in the world, to really point out David Goodman. I didn't tell him I was doing this. David, where are you? David Goodman, in the back. David Goodman's brother, Andrew Goodman, was assassinated in Mississippi by white supremacists, along with James Chaney and Michael Schwerner. David has remained a social justice leader. Thank you, David. David and others took a stand, or a knee, for justice. I love this part. To thank he gets so embarrassed, the brilliant, he's falling in his chair, kind and humble Vice Dean Randy Hertz, who is you know him, who is the faculty liaison for this series since Derek's passing. Students, everyone loves Randy. He is so humble, he is student-focused. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce someone who really needs no introduction, Tony Thompson, who is the founding faculty director for the New York University Center on Race, Inequality, and the Law. Can I have an amen? A renowned professor of clinical law, he teaches courses related to criminal law and litigation. His scholarship focuses on race, offender reentry, criminal justice issues, and leadership. His book, Redeeming Prisoners, Redeeming Communities, is an in-depth look at the issues of reentry, race, politics, and media. His article, Stopping the Usual Suspects, Race and the Fourth Amendment, is a substantial contribution to the field and frequently cited by legal scholars and the media. He has many awards, among them teaching awards at this school, the NYU's Podell Distinguished Teaching Award and the university's Distinguished Teaching Award. He received the L Award from El Diario for his community service. Now, Derek loved music. Almost every program includes music. Tonight we have, you've heard him earlier tonight, Roscoe Boyd. Wasn't he fine? And pianist Kenneth Hansen. Now every year, some of you do not get the memo that we're doing the Stevie Wonder version of Happy Birthday, because this is not only a serious lecture series, it's a celebration of Derek's exemplary life of meaning and worth, and it's a celebration of his birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Good evening. A lot about the law is timing. Last year at this event, Cheryl and Eiffel made it a point to tell me not ever to be on the stage again when that song was sung. So I know to wait to come up. We are so pleased this evening to have you all here. And part of this evening will happen after Ted's important comments when we get to unveil the Derek Bell portrait. We're very excited about that. Derek would be so pleased tonight, my friend, my mentor, my colleague, to have in the same room Sherilyn, Elaine Jones, a history that bridges us through the civil rights era. We can't tell you how pleased we are you're here. 12 years ago, I got a call from a former student and a mentee of mine. He said there was a young lawyer that I should talk to up in the Bronx. And we had a conversation. And in the ensuing time, that young lawyer became a very good attorney under Sherilyn's tutelage at the LDF. He handled issues of racial justice and the death penalty and the intersection of race and criminal justice. He went on to become a fantastic young federal defender. And for me, he represents the future. I've seen him in those 12 years become a great husband and a great father. He represents the best in all of us. Join me in welcoming my executive director at the Center of Race, Inequality, and Law, Vincent Sutherland.
Good evening, and thank you for those very warm words, Tony. As Tony said, my name is Vincent Sutherland. I'm the Executive Director of the Center on Race and Equality in the Law. We attack racism in the institutions that govern our lives through public education, research, advocacy, and litigation. We seek to put critical race theory into practice and rest our work on the notion that not everything that is faced can be changed, but that nothing can be changed until it is faced. I have the distinct honor of introducing tonight's lecturer, Ted Shaw. The title of his lecture, Race and Rights in a Time of Madness, What Would Derek Do? WWDD, is, as typical of Ted, perfectly stated. We seem to be living in increasingly mad and maddening times. White supremacists are gathering for White Lives Matter rallies in places like San Francisco and Berkeley, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and Charlottesville, Virginia. They're emboldened and countenanced by the current occupant of the White House and those who support and guide his agenda, and find allegiances with those who, for the moment, control the levers of power. It's against that backdrop that we have gathered tonight to hear from Ted, to be privy to his wise counsel, informed by the prolific genius of one of the country's most foremost minds on race, Derek Bell. Ted comes to us as the Julius L. Chambers Distinguished Professor of Law and Director of the Center for Civil Rights at the University of North Carolina School of Law at Chapel Hill. But the fact of the matter is that Ted comes to us from the battlefield. Of course, the state of North Carolina has seen more than its fair share of struggles with race and justice. And Ted has been at the forefront of those struggles for a very long time. Since 2014, when he took the current position he currently holds, many of you know he's been engaged in a battle for the better part of the last year as UNC's Board of Governors has played politics with the civil rights of those who Ted and his center seek to vindicate, voting to bar the litigation activities of all of UNC centers, the only one of which that actually engages in any litigation is Ted's center. But that battle continues. And of course, Ted's time at UNC is just the latest stop in a career that has been defined by struggles for justice and emblematic of what Professor Bell would call meaning and worth. He was born, at the risk of revealing his age, when Brown versus Board of Education became the law of the land. And when he graduated from Columbia Law School, he immediately set out to advance the principles enshrined by Brown and his progeny, and the constitutional underpinnings through the work on civil rights and racial justice as a trial attorney in the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. In 1982, at another time of madness, he joined the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, America's Council on Race, and one of the finest civil rights law firms in the country. Over the next 26 years, Ted did just about everything one can do as a lawyer at the Legal Defense Fund. Where race and the law intersected, you would find Ted Shaw with his keen intellect, sharp wit, and wise judgment, doing the work to hold America to the promises made in his foundational documents. Following a few years spent teaching at Michigan Law, he went on to serve as Associate Director Counsel and then Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, until 2008 when he left to help Barack Obama's Justice Department find its sea legs and do the type of work that was so desperately needed after an 8-year hiatus imposed by the Bush years. There's much more I could say about all the things that Ted has done throughout his career. His various teaching positions, all of the professional honors and accolades, awards and activities. But let me just say this. Wherever Ted has been, from the halls of the Justice Department to the halls of academia, from storied civil rights law firms to international gatherings and convenings on race and human rights, Ted has been a drum major for justice, human, and civil rights. I also happen to know that he's an incredible father, a wonderful husband, and an all-around great person, one dedicated to his family and to supporting and nurturing those who aspire to follow in his footsteps and can only hope to do 1/10 of the things that he has done and will continue to do. And that's why I'm so very proud to welcome him as he adds one more chapter to an incredibly storied legal career, delivering this year's Derek Bell Lecture. Please join me in welcoming Theodore Shaw.
Thank you, Vince. I just told Vince that that was very kind of him. I couldn't have been more flattering if I had written it myself. I'm honored to be here tonight. I want to thank Kelly Spencer. Where's Kelly Spencer? Somewhere. Okay, so I want to thank her because she spent more time than she should have in trying to shepherd me toward this evening while I was focused on many other things, some of which I'll talk about tonight. And so I'm very thankful to her for all that she has done. I also want to say thank you to Janet Bell. I was listening to you, Janet, and I was thinking about, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I was thinking about how much grace and dignity you have. And I was thinking about your love for Derek. And Janet, you really demonstrate in everything you do and what you are that love doesn't die. And so I want to thank you for your part in letting me be part of this evening and to remember Derek. So I am also conscious of the fact that there's so many friends here that I'm so tempted to call out names, but you know, if I do that, I'll be in deep trouble. I will offend people for not calling out their names when I intend to. I do have to acknowledge the presence of my sister, Vivian Buckingham, and where are you, Vivian? Somewhere. Oh, there you are. And, you know, I embarrass her all the time, and I take great pleasure in doing it. Vivian Buckingham of the Manassas, Virginia Buckinghams. And somewhere my brother Christopher, I was looking for him as I came down here. Chris, where are you? He's somewhere in here. I don't quite see him. And finally, but certainly not last, and I won't explain this. I don't have time to explain it. But believe me, it's in my heart, and I wish I did. Reverend John T. Meehan, who is sitting back over this way. Father Meehan, just raise your hand for a minute. All I can tell you, in the best sense of the word, I would not be who I am and where I am, but for that man. So let me see if I can get through this, because I know that we have an unveiling. And I also know, as I am conscious of, once I start, I can go. And this is the wrong time to do that, and the wrong place to do that. So let me share some thoughts with you, if I may. And I usually don't read speeches. I'm no good at doing that, although I did a lot of writing here. I don't know how much I'm going to actually deliver that I wrote, but I am deeply honored to be here tonight, and there's been a great line of people who are giving this lecture, most of whom I know pretty well, some of whom are my dearest friends, and some of whom I'm thinking about a lot these days. So Derek has been gone from us now since 2011, so for 6 years. And in many ways, the country that he left us with is not the country that we have now. In fact, it's hard to recognize the country we have now. And I'm conscious of the fact that Derek Bell lived to see the first African-American president of the United States. I'm glad he lived to see that. Since his passing, many of us have found ourselves in a time that challenges our souls. And it is a time, I think, increasingly of madness. I've thought many times about the opening lines of Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. I'm sure many of you have. And so, if we can reimagine his opening lines for a moment, I think that it's appropriate. We can apply it to the present. It is the best of times. It is the worst of times. It is the information age. It is the age of fake news. It is the epoch of scientific knowledge. It is the epoch of scientific denial. It is the season of light. It is the season of darkness. It is the spring of hope. It is the winter of despair. We have everything before us. We have nothing before us. As Dickens wrote so long ago, we are all going directly to heaven. We are all going directly the other way. We are in post-racial America. We are in an America that is as infected and driven by racism as it has ever been. In short, the period is so unlike any other in our nation's history that many of us are unsure about the survival of American democracy as we know it. We have had a twice-elected, eloquent, and constitutionally steeped African-American president of the United States whose signature achievement was national health care. We have had an African-American president who was respected as a leader throughout the world, who exemplified dignity and grace, who was a role model for tens of millions of African Americans and all American children, whose administration was remarkably scandal-free. We now have, and let me preface this, I don't come here lightly or easily to deliver a partisan polemic talk. Really, it's not what I would want to do. And in fact, as a lecturer in this series, Janet, I've struggled with whether I should talk about, law in an academic address. But I cannot be here tonight without talking about where we are in this country right now. And by definition, it will sound partisan in some ways. All I can do is assure you that there are times when I don't love Democrats either. But having said that, we have a mentally and emotionally unstable, narcissistic, and bellicose president who has defended and harbored white supremacists, who has unapologetically said racist and misogynist things to the people of America, who is boorish and crude, and I don't have to tell you why I say that, who openly disdains the rule of law, whose administration is oblivious to the ways that government and ethics operate, who forces us to explain things to our children that they shouldn't have to hear, especially from the President of the United States, who is an embarrassment on the world stage, and who is unashamedly ignorant or uncaring about how our constitutional design was intended to work. Now, I apologize, I couldn't say some of those things without stumbling. If Dickens were to return and write a tale about early 21st century United States, it might be entitled A Tale of Two Americas. One is the old America, which for 232 years elected an unbroken chain of white men to be president. Grover Cleveland, of course, served 2 non-consecutive terms, and so you have to consider that in account, but you get the point. The new America is reflected in the election of our 44th president, Barack Obama, in 2008, to the first of his 2 terms, and appeared to usher in an era in which it was finally true that any child in America could grow up to be president. Yet, the current president, the current occupant of the White House, that's usually what I call him, however, owes his position in no small part to the fact that President Obama is an African American, the cause of an immense tidal wave of opposition, extraordinary opposition to the very legitimacy of his presidency, and to the very idea that an African American could become president. To be sure, not all of the opposition to Barack Obama's presidency was rooted in race. We have to acknowledge that. Bipartisanship and ideological opposition is a defining and a largely healthy fact of life for every presidential administration. Bitter partisanship has marked politics throughout American history. Those who believe the United States is more divided today than ever before simply don't know history. And I say that because in the early days of the country, all we have to do is remember, and some of you have seen a depiction of this recently, I haven't been able to afford it, a sitting vice president of the United States shot and killed a former Secretary of the Treasury in a duel across the river in New Jersey. All we have to do is think about, of course, the Civil War, which apparently is not yet over. Although it could have been avoided, apparently, also, if there was a compromise. Many Americans, I among them, believe that the United States may be facing an existential crisis. Some say that that's too pessimistic, too dark. I want to share with some of you, with all of you rather, but apologize to some of you, because some of you have seen this before. Something that I wrote in January, on January 31st of 2016. And I don't do it in a I told you so kind of state of mind, as much as maybe because when we say things, we find that they're a balm for us because we said it the way we wanted to. But one night, I woke up, and I couldn't sleep, couldn't get back to sleep, and I wrote something. You have to remember that this was in January of 2016. The primaries were even not fully underway. So it wasn't clear what was going to happen. In my early 20s, I read William Shirer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It is a massive documentation of how Hitler came to power, of the Nazi era, and how it came to its end. Hitler fed on Germany's humiliation in the aftermath of the Treaty of Versailles and promised to make the German people strong and their nation great again. He demonized and scapegoated minority groups, Jews, Roma, that is gypsies, Africans, disabled, homosexuals, and others, in the terminology of the time, and rode a wave of ultranationalism and populist sentiment to power. In its early years, the National Socialist Party was not perceived to be a significant threat. They were a fringe group of extremists whose leader, Adolf Hitler, was a carnival barker, supported by a group of thugs. After all, Germany was a, quote, civilized, end quote, nation that, while on the losing side of the First World War, had added a great deal to European culture. One of the most profound moral questions of the 20th century was how the Nazis came to power in one of the greatest European nations, and how in our time, and even those of us who were born after World War II, it was still our time. How in our time they engaged in genocide and mass murder on an almost unprecedented scale. To be sure, genocide and mass murders in the name of nationalism, religion, and ethnic and racial superiority remain a hallmark of the human condition. As Americans, we like to think of ourselves as immune from these threats. After all, we were on the, quote, right side, end quote, of World War II. A, quote, just war, end quote. And indeed, it was true. It was a just war as far as any war can be just. In any event, it was necessary. Now we find ourselves in another century in a yet more technologically advanced civilization. The United States has seen the election of its first African-American president. Twice, the demographics of our country have changed so that its historical majority is being numerically overtaken. Some take these changes in stride and even celebrate these changes as evidence of the strength of America's diversity. Some are deeply unsettled, some even unhinged. We are in uncharted territory. There are many who cry out to, quote, take our country back, end quote, and who are ready to follow one who claims to be able to restore what they are told is America's lost greatness and strength. An American carnival barker has risen to be the front runner of one of our two major parties, which in recent years has increasingly become a party of intolerance and has harbored racists, ultranationalists, and others who claim legitimacy at the expense of those from whom they differ. At first, many did not take seriously the idea that Donald Trump was a political threat to win the Republican nomination for the presidency. His presence in the race was a crude form of political entertainment. Regardless of political differences, we told ourselves the Republican Party would assert itself and end this political circus and the unthinkable possibility of a Trump presidency. Meanwhile, Trump has demonized Mexicans as criminals and rapists, called for building a wall on our southern border, engaged in racist rhetoric and innuendo aimed at our president, advocated a ban on all Muslims from entering the United States, called for violent treatment of anti-racism protesters as one of his public rallies, engaged in an ugly mocking and belittling rant against a disabled reporter who disagreed with him, on and on. I go on to talk about the press, his relationship with the press. And I ended up saying, as bad as it is one thing for a narcissistic, egomaniacal public personality to engage in this manner as a private citizen. It's another when that individual is seeking to wield the power of the presidency of the United States of America. And it's yet another when that individual is the leading candidate of one of our country's two major parties. For some time now, I have believed that our nation is in real danger. I hope that I'm suffering from paranoia. I hope that I am proven wrong. The threat we face does not have to be the same as that faced by Germany in the first half of the 20th century. But as I watch events unfold, I am unsure about where we are going, and I keep thinking, this is how it happens. That was on January 31st of 2016. How much more is there to add since then? And so I know I went on at some length. I can tell you, though, that we are very much under assault daily, every day. There's something new. There's a new Twitter bomb. There's new assaults on individuals. And in fact, we live in a country now where Nazis aren't only the stuff of a television network that looks back at World War II, but they're marching in our streets, and Klansmen. Do you recognize America, the country that we live in now? I think that we can't be so sanguine about the fact that our country is being changed in many ways, largely because of the fear about what happened with the Obama presidency. For decades, those of us who do civil rights work, I should have acknowledged Elaine Jones because she has taught me more than I could ever learn. And of course now Sherilyn Ifill. But those of us who do this work, many others in this room, those of us who are conscious of the continuation of racism in this country have been told that we are paranoid, that we're stuck in the past. We've even been called at times race pimps. That is to say that we are making a living off of race because presumably we couldn't do anything else. And we've said for so long that we're not done with the work of civil rights. Derek knew that. When I met Derek Bell, and in some ways, Derek went to the Justice Department early in his career, and Derek left the Justice Department because he was a member of the NAACP and they wouldn't let him do that. They didn't like that, so he left. I went to the Justice Department under the Carter administration and left under the Reagan administration because it was not a tenable place for me any longer. I did school desegregation cases as Derek did. And when I read Derek's writings early on, some of them were hard for me to accept and process. I was committed to doing school desegregation work. I believed that it was righteous work and that Brown meant something significant to all Americans, that, as I've often said, it was a dividing line between a BC and an AD. Before Brown in this country, black folks, African Americans were subordinated by race for hundreds of years. After Brown, at least under law, racial subordination was no longer legal. And so Brown meant a great deal. It inspired generations of civil rights, new generations of civil rights lawyers. So when I heard Derek saying that school desegregation in his article, Serving Two Masters, has not worked out that well, and he challenged some of the assumptions that were sacred in the very places where I worked, and he used to work. And so that was difficult. Now, I wrote something recently in which I acknowledged the fact, and many of you know this better than I know it, that the accomplishments of the civil rights movement sometimes, maybe even more often than not, were won in spite of, not because of, the relationships of those who worked for civil rights. There were some folks who were oil and water. And when you talk about serving two masters, Janet, there were times when I felt in a way different than what Derek was writing about when he wrote about school desegregation, that I knew different masters. I chose not to make those my fights more often than not, but I thought Derek was cynical, too cynical. I was much more optimistic about that. As it turns out, when Derek talked about how race and racism is a continuing fact of American life, that it had not been eliminated, we didn't know the half of it. And in fact, I'm not even sure, maybe Derek did know how bad it was. But maybe he didn't, I don't know. But I think that it's very clear now that those who've been saying we've been in post-racial America, I don't know how they can continue to make those arguments right now, because there's nothing subtle about it. It's not dog whistle. You know, it is those sirens that, you know the ones I'm talking about. There's nothing subtle about it. And so I think about Derek a lot. I go back and I reread what he wrote. I think about what's happening in the country. I think about the fact that we do have in the White House someone who is harboring white supremacists and who, at the very least, appears to be, if he's not, and frankly, I'm not inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt, is a white supremacist. These are tough times. These are difficult times. This is not democracy as we saw it, and the idea that history is a march toward progress that goes in one direction is one that I think may not be completely accurate. I moved, as many of you know, from New York. I left Kendall and others, Trevor at the time, I think, no, Trevor, you had just left, I think, at Columbia Law School a few years ago and went to North Carolina. Julius Chambers had been trying to get me to come to North Carolina along with another LDF lawyer who was dean of the law school by then, Jack Boger, and to accept a chair in Julius's name and to run a Center for Civil Rights. Julius is one of the great Americans. If you don't know his life story, there's a new biography out about him that I encourage you to read, published by UNC Press. He's one of the great Americans and North Carolinians. So, long story short, although we lost Julius around that time, I went because North Carolina is important and because Chapel Hill isn't a bad place to live. I have to tell you that I've seen things and learned things since I've been in North Carolina that have been eye-opening. I've learned more about human beings, about how people can be unabashedly, unapologetically, not only openly racist, but just flat out evil in what they do. I don't want to sound naive, but when you have folks like people on the Board of Governors who have voted to strip the Center for Civil Rights of its power and authority to do civil rights cases, to represent poor black and brown people who are struggling with the legacy of racism. And they do it for reasons that are patently dishonest. You know, when you see people do that, and they say they're doing it for one reason, but you then make clear that that's not the reason. You know, for those of us who are civil rights lawyers, you know, I'm thinking about you, Judge Clement, you know, who sat on the bench and heard these cases. What happens when you disprove a proffered reason for taking an action in the context of race? You know, at least it's open to the inference that race was the reason why you did it. That's what's been happening in North Carolina, but the North Carolina legislature and the Board of Governors has acted in a range of ways that works against the interests of African Americans. The monster voter suppression bill, as it's been called, to strip voting rights from citizens in every way that they could. Fourth Circuit finds that they attacked and targeted black voters with surgical precision. Surgical precision, that's the words of the Fourth Circuit. When you see laws being passed that now put a lock on partisan gerrymandering, which effectively means that the ability to choose your representatives is denied. This has been done on grounds of race, and we now have in the Supreme Court a case under consideration with respect to partisan gerrymandering. Let me be clear. Some of us in this room, Sherilyn, who I guess, I knew she had to leave, but Sherilyn, Elaine, others who did voting rights cases, we worked for majority black congressional districts and county representation and municipal representation across the South, because it was the only way in the face of racial divisions, divisiveness at the polls. It was the only way that we were able to get representation of African Americans. I think we were right to do that at the time. That's how we desegregated Congress for the most part, and state legislatures, et cetera. That's the only reason we were able to do it. Some people told us that we were wrong to do it, that it would hurt Democrats. And I used to say, well, why should black people have to be the basis for making sure that Democrats are elected? This is really about how white people are voting. That's what we should be talking about. Having said all that, although I think we were right in doing it when we did it, I've been saying this to Sherilyn, she agrees, others are thinking about it. In places like North Carolina and states across the country, we now have to unpack these districts because they've been packed with representation of African Americans beyond what's necessary to give the opportunity to elect representatives of choice. And the result has been the gerrymandering that we've seen that in North Carolina has elected not only a lock on Republican representation, but extremist representation. That's a real challenge. I can't tell you what it's like in the little bit of time I have to be in North Carolina now, to have the center stripped of the ability to bring representation or in civil rights cases or provide it, but not only that, can't even give legal counsel to poor black and brown people. Not only that, you can't even refer cases to other lawyers without violating this BOG rule. I think that's a violation of the First Amendment, by the way, and what lawyers do generally. But basically to close down that center with respect to representation. We can still do research, and I intend to do that, and to write papers, and certainly to speak against racial injustice, but we can't do what lawyers do any longer. Not only that, and I share this with a little bit of hesitation because it's not quite out there publicly, but it will be there within the next day or two. So I probably ought not say this, but there was an anonymous complaint filed against the center. This is after the BOG did what the Board of Governors did what it did already. But they're not done with the center yet. An anonymous complaint saying that the center is engaging in the unauthorized practice of law. I'm not going to get into all the details of why that's a problematic assertion, especially given the fact that the state bar that processes these complaints certifies students to work under their rules, and to be able to go to court and certifies them in the places that they work. In doing that, and we have the letters in which they certified it, does this mean that the state bar is certifying people to work at an office that engages in the unauthorized practice of law? It doesn't make sense. But you would be mistaken if you think that the state bar is beyond the reach of the mean-spirited politics of North Carolina right now. I see these people and I see how they operate, and I ask, what kind of people are these? What kind of people are these? This is a different kind of person, and they're not ashamed of it. They revel in it. In North Carolina, some people say, why are you there? Come on back to New York, or at least get out of there. And my answer is this. Sometimes you run from fires, sometimes you run to them. And North Carolina, in many respects, is ground zero. But it's also reflective of what's happening around the country. It's not like we can escape racism in North Carolina and go to an America that is racism-free. We are in a country right now in which, as I've indicated, race is out here, right up front. Racism, right up front. A president of the United States, a chief of staff, they're still fighting the Civil War. Years ago, I gave a ride to a young man from Wales to Ann Arbor from the airport in Detroit. And I was asking him what was his experience while he was a graduate student in the United States. What did he think about our country? I didn't know what I was going to hear. I wasn't fishing. He might say, I love it. It's a great place, greatest place on earth. And he said that what he was struck by is how in America it seems that race is still the most important thing. He said it's like a civil war that you hold under your breath. And I've thought about that over the years. That's exactly what it is, except now it isn't even under our breath anymore. It's open. I am one, and I'll wrap this up, I am one, Janet, who, when we're driving down the roads of North Carolina and Virginia and elsewhere, I read these road markers, these signs, historical markers. Drive my wife crazy. I have her stop. Well, she figured out a way that we didn't have to stop because actually there's an app for these signs and you can read them without stopping. But I also am one who goes to see a lot of the places that were significant in American history. I've been to Harper's Ferry. I've seen where John Brown led his rebellion. John Brown was treated as if he was insane for rebelling against slavery. I've been to Gettysburg. I understand the loss of life at Gettysburg, how painful an episode Gettysburg in the Civil War was, and how Americans on both sides of it, lost lives. I understand that. For me, just because you go and visit these places doesn't make you a racist. I've been to Fort Sumter to see where the first shots were fired because I like history. I'm a student of history. And there's some places I think that we all have to see if we really want to understand American history in many ways. But that doesn't mean that I in any way venerate the statue of Silent Sam who stands on the campus, in the middle of the campus at UNC, erected by the Daughters of the Confederacy and alumni, honoring Confederate soldiers who fought in the Civil War, not the soldiers or the students from UNC who fought in the Union Army, and there were many of them too. And when it was dedicated, Julian Carr, Carborough, North Carolina, next door to Chapel Hill, named after him now. Julian Carr talked about how when he came back from Appomattox, he, just days after that, horsewhipped a, quote, black wench, end quote, who had fled to the campus for shelter after she had insulted a white woman in the quiet village of Chapel Hill. That statue stands on the campus in a central place, venerated and protected by recently enacted North Carolina law. Now, think about what that means. That statue is nothing if it is not a monument to those who fought to preserve slavery and white supremacy. So we're still fighting the Civil War. We were fighting it in Charlottesville recently, and we're fighting it around the country and in the White House and in other places with this presidency. I don't know where we're going as a country. I know that Derek was a man of great principle, and I think sometimes, and I wonder whether I ought to do what Derek did and resign from UNC. I'm not Derek. I don't claim to have what Derek had. I know that I am fighting these folks and will fight them and with everything that I can. Derek was in many ways conscious of these dilemmas. He wrote about it, right? Ethical Ambitions. If you haven't read it, it's really profound. You ought to read it. I recommend it to you. I plan to read from it, but I've been going on too long anyway, so I need to stop. The point is this, that each one of us has to, inside of us, find out what this means to us as individuals and to us collectively at this time to be an American, to be in America, to see the madness that is occupying the White House right now and our government, and that is denied every day by people in media, by people in political parties, by people who frankly don't care about the issues that many of us care about. What would Derek do? I don't know what Derek would do, but I know that he would tell us, because he's told us this already, to find out what's in each one of us, that little voice that tells you to stand up and speak against the day, as the saying goes. That's what we're called upon right now to do, to speak against the day, because this is not normal. It's not a good day. It's not the America that we committed ourselves to. And so I know Derek would, one way or another, be engaged in struggle every day in every way that he could against what's going on. And I urge all of us to do that. It's not just North Carolina. It's the entire country that's infected by a madness now. We can wait for the special prosecutor and hope, but I think that we have to raise our voices. We have to vote. We have to organize. We have to speak against this day and bend the course of history back to a path where it's something that we can be proud of when we leave what's left of this world and this country to our children. So that's what's been on my mind and in my heart. I have a whole lot more that I was prepared to say, but I've gone on long enough, and there's a portrait that needs to be unveiled, and I want to see it. And so thank you for letting me share some thoughts with you. Thank you.
attention, please. In the 20-plus years I've been on this faculty, this is one of my most cherished moments. The images that we put on our walls in an institution reflect our values. And Derek Bell's image should be on our walls. Derek has launched the careers of many civil rights warriors and many legal academics. Many of us are in this profession because of Derek. I spent a lot of time mad at Derek. My first year in law school, Derek and I became friends. And then he upped and left. He left because he had a principle that there should be women of color on the tenure track. And he stood on that principle. And people said to Derek, "You can't leave Harvard. This is the pinnacle of your career." And Derek said, "I have principle, and I stand on principle." We've learned a great deal from Derek. Those of you who don't know, he has mentored and supported those of us who have been litigators, those of us who have been academics, and some, like my wife and myself, who have been both. But he has been quite supportive of us over the years. And when Derek left Harvard, one of the things that made me so proud of this institution is that he was to come here and to spend his career continuing to mentor students and to do his work. I was never so proud of an institution as I was of New York University School of Law. And Derek Bell represents the best of what we do. And it's because of Derek that many of us do it. But before we unveil this portrait, which I am so anxious to do, I want to give Janet a chance to give some words on behalf of the Bell family.
I just want to say that I had nothing to do with this. And the reason I say that is that this is out of the vision and the kindness and the hope of Tony Thompson, Anthony Tony Thompson, for what should represent Derek at this law school. So Tony Thompson, thank you. So it is my pleasure, on behalf of the Bell family, you've seen us earlier, talked to us during the reception, we're so pleased that you are here. I'd like to thank NYU, New York University School of Law, for this great honor, and thank the visionary, the wonderful Tony Thompson for making this happen. Thank you.
So where is Ted Wells? Where's Ted? Ted in the back of the room. So Ted, I want you to know that this was one of a two-pronged thing I want to do before I leave here. The second is I want to create a Derek Bell chair at this institution. So I'm going to be coming to you for advice on that. So I just want to let you know. But with no further ado, shall we? Oh, I'm sorry. Daniel Mark Duffy, who is a fabulous artist, was the person who created this. Would you put your hand up? Where are you, Daniel? So, thank you. This is the artist.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
An honor. Great honor. Such an honor, Dr. Bell.